We're live, Luke. Thank you very much. Okay, welcome everybody to this morning's Appointments and Conditions Service Committee. And the first item is calling for apologies for abstentions and substitutions. I've got an apology of Jenny Hollinsworth. Councillor Jenny Hollinsworth. Apologies. Are there any others? And Viv. Let's move on here. Forgotten what she looks like. All right. Okay then. We'll move on to the next item to approve as a correct record. That's item 2. The minutes meeting held on 19th of March 2025. That's on pages 5 to 6. I'll move those. We agreed. We are agreed. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Anybody wishing to declare an interest? There are none declared, so we're moving quickly on to review of the DBS policy, and that's a report of the Assistant Director of Workforce. What a title, Jen. Over to you.
I didn't create it, but it's a good one.
Yeah.
Right, good morning all. So this report is to present to the committee the review of our DBS procedures to ensure that Gedling Borough Council remains compliant in its use of DBS checking and to review to reduce safeguarding risks and increase efficiency in the way that we process applications. Can everybody hear me? No. So the recommendations are that the committee approve the changes to the current policy, which determines which roles are checked, the level and frequency of those checks, and combining all existing policies and procedures on DBS checks into one document for ease of reference for managers and staff. So, as you're all aware, I think you're all familiar with DBS checks now, and this is where within the council we do conduct enhanced DBS checks for specific roles, and they include parks and street care, where we have staff working near schools, community relations, public protection, customer services and leisure. There have been a couple of exceptions where we have cleaners and bar staff at the Richard Herod Centre that haven't had checks because they're not normally in contact with vulnerable people. So this is where we've provided the current list of staff at Appendix 1 who actually get an enhanced DBS check. So the council has a staff handbook, and within that there are various policies in terms of how DBSs are used and how we fund those DBSs, and that's at Appendix 2. Now, the current policy refers to conducting checks at conditional offer stage or where people are moving into an area where a check is needed. The council currently doesn't operate a regime of systematic DBS rechecking. A recheck of an employee is only conducted where there is a legislative requirement to do so. Now, in our view, this practice does expose us to safeguarding and reputational risks, where we have a number of staff in post that probably should have those checks done regularly. So, when it comes to recruitment and selection, this is where we ensure that all staff have a DBS check. So when they're appointed, they do have a DBS check. And what we're proposing here is that we conduct regular checks for staff. So this is where we will do it on a 3-yearly basis. We're proposing in the report that you've got before you that we have consistency in how we conduct DBS checks. So where we have some cleaners and some caretakers who aren't currently checked at an enhanced level, we're proposing that everybody has those done. So I mentioned the Richard Herod staff, where you have caretakers and cleaners. We're proposing that they have enhanced checks. That makes it consistent with all other staff in that category. We're also suggesting that staff in finance and legal have standard checks because they are people who have access to personal data and in positions of trust. And we're also proposing that staff who are county signatories, who actually process DBS applications, they also have enhanced checks as well, which is one of the requirements of the Act. In addition to that, whilst we're suggesting that those enhanced checks are taking place for those groups mentioned, we are proposing that all staff have a basic check. And this is because we're all in public office, and we think this would be a positive thing to do to ensure that all remaining staff have a basic check. So the paper before you outlines the costs that will be involved in that. The legal implications is that it's important that we do DBS checks. Lots of other councils do that, and it's ensuring that we're complying with the legislation on this for enhanced checks, but also ensuring that we're protecting our reputation as a council. So I'd like to offer it out to members if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask me.
David.
Thanks, Leader. It makes sense to me, the policy and making it consistent and the rechecks. So I'm happy with all that. Just from your experience, have you any idea how many people or potential employees don't get employed because they fail a DBS check?
Since October last year, and so far I've not seen any that haven't been appointed on that basis. Now, the policy that's being produced does provide a procedure in the event of that happening. So if we get an adverse DBS check, what will happen is that there'll be a conversation within HR, within my team. They'll draw that to my attention, and I'll discuss that with the relevant recruiting manager and also the director of that area. Now, if there's an adverse issue on there, it depends what the issue is. It depends on the nature of the work the person's doing, because having an adverse a DBS check doesn't necessarily mean that you won't be appointed. So we'll do a risk assessment based on what those findings are as to whether that person's appointed or not. One of the things we do is ensure that when we're advertising roles, we do make it very clear that staff will be subject to a DBS, particularly where they're in those enhanced roles. But if we are going to look at changing the process where all staff will be checked, then that's something, again, that applicants will be aware of. And so they know that if there is anything that does come out on an adverse basis, that it could impact whether we appoint them or not.
It'd just be interesting to monitor this. So next time we come to review the policy, we'll have some idea of how many problems it's avoided.
Yes, absolutely, and that's a really good idea. We do like to ensure that we're reviewing our policies. We do keep recruitment under review, and this will be part of that process.
Marge.
By the same token, thank you, I wonder if we might lose some good candidates who remember that they had an offence back in their early teens and are worried that it now will just be held against them without the review. So when we're advertising, is it clear that that is not necessarily so? I mean, I don't think we can say in the advert, this doesn't mean that you're automatically barred, but I think it could be phrased in some way within paperwork that people submit.
Yes, in terms of the information that we provide to candidates once they've applied for a post, we will make it clear on the basis of what will happen if there's an adverse impact, and it doesn't necessarily completely bar someone. Based on what I've just said, it is dependent on the role that somebody's going in, and also when you're doing that risk assessment, you would look at when the offence took place. Now, if we're looking at doing DBS checks for all staff, and this is our current workforce, then this is where we may find that there are people who have had certain things that have happened in the past, and then that's something that we will do internally as well, that we'll have that sensible conversation in terms of whether this has a negative impact or not.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Paul?
Thank you. Just to say, I think it is a sensible policy, and bringing everything together in one document makes it a lot easier for everybody. So I think that is good. And the only thing that occurred to me, because the basic check, which we're asking everybody to have, is just shows unspent convictions. That's right, my understanding. Just shows unspent convictions. So somebody who had a minor conviction 20 years ago, is not going to show up in any event. So let's hope it doesn't impact on recruitment or indeed retention. What would happen if an employee were to refuse to undertake a check?
We consider this to be a reasonable request in terms of a new policy that will hopefully be agreed by this committee, and all staff will be treated in the same way. We will deal with this on a sensitive basis, and we'll talk to individuals on a confidential basis to understand what their concerns are, and understand why they wouldn't be happy with having that check.
Okay, we'll move to the vote. Recommendations on page 7 there. I'll move it. Agreed. Thank you. Still on there, still with you, Jen. That's policy updates on sexual harassment.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to present to the committee the review of the changes required in law for the council to be compliant, and this is in relation to the prevention of sexual harassment following an amendment to the Workers' Protection Amendment of Equality Act 2010, Act 2023, that came into effect on the 26th of October 2024. So the work that we've done currently is to look at our current policies in terms of sexual harassment. We do currently have a harassment policy, and so what we've done is to make amendments to that policy with an additional section referring to sexual harassment in the workplace and how staff need to comply in terms of proper conduct and behaviour. Because of the nature of the importance of this particular policy, what we have done is created a new sexual harassment policy in itself, in its own right, and that's something that we want to promote in the workforce so that people are absolutely clear on what our standards are, and so that we can implement this as part of our equality, diversity and inclusion policies so that people feel safe at work. Now, the legislation does put the onus on the employer to ensure that its staff are safe, and what we've done here is to amend our policies to ensure that we can socialise these within the workforce, that staff are clear on the expectations of them, and we will be linking this to training for managers and for staff later in the year. Any questions from members?
Marge?
I welcome the policy. I know it's sometimes difficult for people to balance banter with sexual harassment. So I do hope that staff will fully appreciate whatever training is given, particularly if they have it pointed out to them that something was wrong, and have it explained rather than be shouted at for it, because that won't get us anywhere. We need to move them on to understand it wasn't banter, it was quite offensive. So thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
Thank you, Chair. 2 points. One, this seems a very, very sensible policy. I mean, we obviously have to do it by law, and it just seemed to me quite comprehensive. This is just a general question regarding changes to policies and updates to the staff handbook. Obviously, I presume that is circulated to all members of staff. Do we require them to confirm that they've read it or understood it?
At this stage, not, but that's what we're going to be looking at going forward in terms of reviewing our handbook and ensuring that when new policies are actually updated, that we can see that staff have read and approved those. We currently haven't got the facility to do that, but there are ways in which we can going forward where you can automate that sort of process in terms of somebody reading something and then that being signed off on a computer system. So that's something that we're hoping we can develop going forward. So if I may, just to touch upon some of the concerns raised about banter, our Gedling inclusion group, which focus on equality, diversity and inclusion issues, they did a really good report. So they did a survey recently with staff, and they've come up with some really good recommendations in how we can support staff in the workplace. And one of those areas is banter. So there is some work that's going to be done within a couple of months, and that's about providing staff with a guide in terms of what's considered acceptable and unacceptable in terms of banter. One of the things that I'm looking to do as well is to link their campaign with training in terms of equality, diversity and inclusion, and I'm looking at appointing a drama-based organisation that I've used previously, which is quite powerful in terms of the actors acting out various scenarios within the workplace, and then it's engaging the audience to ask them what should happen next. So it's a really good way of ensuring that people are educated in a way that's engaging, and this is something that we're going to do for all staff. So where we have staff working in leisure, on sites and also the depot, we are looking at providing direct courses for them as well, so that it reaches everybody in the organisation and not just head office staff.
Thank you very much.
So, Jen, where did the members fit in? Can they be included in this?
We are looking at providing training for members. So that's something that's been raised. I've spoken to Emma McGinley in Democratic Services about members training. So that's something that's on our radar as well. So yes, we'll be providing some training for yourselves.
Thank you. And I was looking at the news this morning. I see that leading tennis player of ours is still being harassed by somebody, and which is wrong and needs dealing with quickly. Do we keep this under review? Because I don't think some people have got the message. I think they're just clearly not, I mean, we get this aggression and we get this, that and the other, but it's not just frightening, but particularly to the young women and students that are walking about our city now, the derogatory comments that are made to them. I mean, some people can take it, and other people it affects them mentally. So I'd like to keep this, if we can, under review.
Absolutely, Chair. And we do take this area quite seriously. And I am encouraged about the response we've had so far to the survey that was done by Gigs, because this is where we surveyed our staff to ask their opinions in terms of what we could do differently. And this is where the senior leadership team are also supportive of the initiative. So it's definitely one we'll keep under review, and we can bring back to this meeting in terms of the outcomes and the benefits that we've achieved as a result of the training.
So can we put a sort of bit of a timescale on it? Can we say bring it back in another year's time and see how we
Yes,
how we do with
absolutely.
that? Just to keep right on top of it, because it's a matter about respect, isn't it? And there's so much disrespect given out to lots of things and people, from racism, etc.
Yeah.
But it's very important we get hold of this, without a doubt. So if there's no further comments, then I'll move the recommendation, which is on page 29 there. Are we agreed? We are agreed. Thank you. Moving on to the next one, which is delegated authority to launch HR policies, and that's item 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this report is basically for the committee to review the approval of the flow of policies from committees. So currently, we have a situation whereby policies that are amended or new policies come to the Appointments and Conditions of Service Committee first. They then go to the Joint Consultative Committee for consultation, and then it comes back to this committee for final approval. One of the things we are suggesting in this paper is that this committee provides delegated authority to the Chief Executive so that he can launch the consultation of new or amended policies that we produce. Now, the reason why we ask this is that we are reviewing all of our HR policies, and so it would be helpful if we could do this in a timely fashion by the Chief Executive Officer launching that consultation. This committee will absolutely be the final approvers of all policy changes that occur. So that's something that we just wanted to put out to you for consideration.
So there is member involvement.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just to try and quicken the process up.
Yeah.
So, any comments? Fine. David?
makes perfect sense to do this bit of streamlining. I'm quite happy with it.
It finishes up here anyway.
It does, absolutely.
Yeah. So that decision is on page 59. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, which is the Director's Performance Pay Review.